Greater Phoenix. We can tell our story differently. A new perspective. A different look. Greater Phoenix A to Z.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when this finds you. Welcome to the Greater Phoenix A to Z podcast. I am your host, Tim Borsett, and joined by my amazing co-host, Casey Gilchrist. Casey, how are you doing today?
I'm staying cool as much as I can.
This is your second full Arizona summer.
Yes, but it's awful. Like this 110, 113 degree weather is just not for me.
Here's the thing. Once it's over 110, it's all the same. It's mental.
I don't know if that's true.
You also have like nice long curly hair and I have none. So I'm guessing the heat and the humidity is
that's why
probably a little different for you.
You've seen a lot of updos from me recently to escape that. Yes.
Well, over the last 6 months, this podcast has brought you news and interviews from across key industries, semiconductors, AI, focuses on Black excellence, and other key issues to the region. However, today we're going to talk and discuss the growth and history of the Greater Phoenix region over the last few decades with a spotlight on one of our favorite GPEC board members representing American Airlines, the great Jack McCain. Jack, how's everything going?
Fantastic. Incredibly glad to be here with you. And despite the fact, American gives you money, so that's probably why I'm here, but really, really happy to be here and glad to be a part of GPEC.
I mean, the money definitely helps, but we are also excited that you're here. When Casey and I were discussing some of the upcoming podcasts, we've been so focused on industries, we thought, hey, it'd be good to talk about the growth of the region. It'd also be good to have another native. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Jack knows this better than anybody. So this is probably a nice combo here. So we're going to turn over to you for a few moments. We're going to work backwards. So let's start where you're currently at, American Airlines. Please tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, how long you've been there, and just give us an overview of your role with American.
Sure. So I joined American in January of 2020.
Good timing, Jack, for an airline. Great timing.
If you've been around, you know how bad the industry had been. I actually assumed that I was going to have to leave the job right after I started, which I'm really glad I didn't have to because I love doing what I do. I'm the government affairs director for our airline. I work out of the Phoenix hub, but I cover the state of Texas west to the California border, excluding Montana.
And does that include Hawaii? I remember Hawaii was in the mix.
Mid-COVID, I was doing all the way out to Hawaii. Now, between Hawaii and California, you definitely need a whole human being to do that. I'm glad that is no longer my role. I'm happy with the Sun Belt and sticking to that. But I jokingly refer to myself as American's hatchet man in Phoenix. My job is just interface with the community, make sure that we're represented where we need to be represented, and try to keep legislation that may negatively impact us, out of consideration.
And I got to say, America's doing a great job. The great Joe Hughes was before you. Anybody in the industry, and especially American, knows Joe, a real character. We'll just leave it at that.
Joe is a fine human being and also a very tough act to follow. So I'm lucky he still is doing good work in D.C.
Yep, he's up there now wheeling and dealing with the big wigs. But again, a shout out to Joe Hughes. Hopefully he's listening. We always like to give him a little grief when we can. Now, you've been in there a couple of years. Before that, pretty heavy military service time. Maybe just walk us through from graduating high school through where you were, and then we'll get into your upbringing and we'll talk about the region. But how did the military play into your life?
Sure. Well, it was the Naval Academy or bust. I am fourth generation Naval Academy, and I feel terrible for my son because I'm going to try to inflict that on him as well. The whole theory of life here is it will not fail because of me.
Maybe he'll get wise and join the Air Force.
Maybe. Actually, I got a funny story about that later. But so I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2009. I immediately went to flight school where I don't know if it was a good or bad choice. It was a choice to go train with the Air Force in beautiful Enid, Oklahoma.
I'm sorry, that location not great. But I got to say from my Air Force brethren, our bases, great golf courses, great dining facilities, excellent services all around.
Absolutely.
Just saying for the record.
Well, whenever the Air Force moves into town, they build the golf course first and then run out of money, so they have to have more money to build the actual airfield part.
Sounds right on track.
So I had a great time in flight school from Oklahoma back to Pensacola. And then after finishing up the advanced training there, I was assigned to the toughest duty station in the Navy, San Diego. Learned how to fly the big gray helicopter in North Island, but knew that I had orders to Guam, where I spent a little less than 3.5 years. Deployed a bunch out of there, did a lot of search and rescue while we were at home, which honestly is the most rewarding thing you can do as a military pilot. plucking people out of the water. There is nothing more tangible than that person would not have survived without my help. So a fantastic job. Guam's a small island. 3.5 years there is enough. But I was lucky to, they say join the Navy and see the world. 70% of the world is water. Saw a lot of big blue ocean, but also I saw the Middle East, the Western Pacific, I guess just kind of all over. From there, I was a little tired. I did 3 deployments in 3 years, took a set of orders to the Naval Academy, which was also an incredibly rewarding experience. I taught leadership while I was there. I worked in their leadership department and taught freshmen all the way up through seniors in different subjects. But one of my problems is I get bored easy when I feel like I'm not productive, and decided to beg my detailer for a combat gig wherever I could. He said, man, a sucker's born every minute. He mentioned this program called the AFPAC Hands program, which essentially took military officers and senior enlisted people, trained them in Afghan history, politics, language, and culture. I went through a program to teach me to speak Dari.
Super easy, I hear. Just
simple language.
Pick it up in no time, go right out into the field.
Simple language. And that took me to Kandahar Airfield. Essentially did the job of an Air Force air advisor and an AFPAC hand alongside Afghans in Kandahar and kind of all over Helmand. My first commander, a long time ago, great human being, told me if you want to go a long way in naval aviation, you should avoid doing something that's either dumb, different, or dangerous. And that tour was all 3 of those.
I was going to say, I thought you took that to heart.
But it was flying alongside Afghan aviators and their aircraft all over Kandahar and Helmand, quite wild, speaking their language. And then after doing a year of that, I decided it was time to go pursue other things. I joined the Navy Reserves, got recruited into our Special Warfare Squadron. That was around the same time that I got a call from a friend of mine saying, hey, there might be a job opening at American. Would you be interested? It'll take you back to Phoenix, which is really desperately what I wanted to do. I missed home, and I'm glad to be back.
That's excellent. Very cool story, obviously. Let's go back to flight school. Rotary versus fixed wing. You decided perfectly good airplane, no good. I need to get in a destructive piece of machine that goes down regularly for maintenance. You decided rotary is for me.
Weirdly enough, I rented a helicopter out of Eagle Falcon Field in Mesa about midway through flight school to see if it was something I'd be interested in. And in complete contradiction to normal operations, flying a helicopter made more intuitive sense to me than flying an airplane. Again, doesn't make any actual sense, but with 6 degrees of freedom and this kind of amazing kinesthetic feedback, it was like flying a magic carpet. But at the end of it, I really wanted to do search and rescue, which is what took me to the community I was part of and then took me to Guam because that was the best chance you had. My squadron was also something that attracted me to it, was doing the medevac mission in Iraq. A little known piece of history that the Navy Air Ambulance Detachment in Basra was a thing, send Navy pilots to go do Army medevac, and that unfortunately shut down right as I got to the squadron. So I instead went to go deploy on a big, great ship, which I guess joining the Navy, that's what I asked for.
And not for nothing, but any helicopter pilot, any rotary person I've ever met, they're a little nuts. Most of them were Army that I worked with overseas, but also warrant officers, and they're absolutely the most insane people I've ever. But warrant officers.
They are also the people in a crisis that I would want next to my side. Any helicopter I've ever been in, those pilots, like Desert Island, on the list for sure.
We appreciate that. It does take probably a little bit of brain damage to want to actually fly helicopters, but as far as enjoyment goes, having flown both fixed wing and helicopters, I prefer rotary. It's a lot more fun.
Hey, love it. Okay, so we've kind of hit the military, a very large portion of your life. Still in the Navy Reserves, though, correct?
Still, yeah.
Okay, so you still go play 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year?
Still do it on weekends.
No, that's great. Now, I want to bring in, we're both Phoenix natives. I'm a couple years older than you, but 80s babies. And Casey, as a somewhat newbie to Arizona, you don't know the old Phoenix.
I don't. And I mean, I've heard that there's been a transformation, and just from the history lessons and everything like that, but I'm glad to be here now.
But I thought it'd be interesting to bring, you on, obviously, your name well known, you have experienced all this. So just big picture, because I think about it in terms of, I started ACU in 2002, and at that point, I was a soccer and lacrosse official, but for mostly high school. So I was traveling all over the region. So I used to go out to Queen Creek. I used to go down, and I just remember those days of Cotton Field, Orange Field, no 202, no, or at least the extensions of. And I just thinking back to that in 20 years, 22 years, we're now, we're up at the GPEC offices. You can take a look around in every direction. So again, just like big picture, what have you seen? What kind of blows your mind, especially you leaving the region, military, coming back? Because I was active 06 to 10, and I just felt like any trip back to Phoenix, I'd land, I'm like, what the heck? Like, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts, really over, population's doubled since the 80s, but a lot of that key growth was in the early 2000s. What are your kind of thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, every time I came home, it was hard to recognize the place. And then especially having been gone as long as I was, the character, the nature hasn't changed, but the character has. I think the most stark personification is where we're sitting right now in downtown Phoenix. Growing up here, downtown was essentially an area you did not want to go unless it was for a Suns game or to go to Bank One Ballpark, as it was called back then.
The Bob.
Now Chase Field. Now you have a vibrant arts culture. You have business moving back in. My absolute favorite bar in the city, Cobra is nice. Downtown.
I haven't been there yet. I need to add it to the list.
It's not a date spot, but it is a great, you want to go, you want to have a beer. I love pinball. I have a small pinball obsession.
They got the Simpsons pinball arcade there.
They do, and I want to say they had the Starship Troopers one for a little while. But anyway, a great place you want to have a drink, you want to be left alone.
Play some NBA Jam.
Exactly.
Okay.
They've got off-road. That's my old school. The four-wheeling. That's like classic late 80s.
Okay.
So shout out to Cobra, a great bar. But it's indicative of this massive change that came from what I feel are smart business practices. It came from a desire for smart growth, not just growth for growth's sake. And the second thing that I would point out is the massive investment, for instance, semiconductors being the one that everybody brings to mind because of just how big it is. Me being the national security guy, I find a pretty remarkable and important metaphor in the fact that Taiwan is investing so heavily in Arizona. I think we've also, while we can always improve, we've done a really good job with water management. It can be better and it should be better, but as we've grown, we've put a lot of thought into how we're going to manage our most precious resource for the future.
Yeah, because I'll turn this over to Casey since she's on the business development side, but water is still the one thing that comes up. And Casey, what are we messaging to those projects?
I think exactly what Jack said. It's, we've been good stewards of our water. There's always ways to improve. And I think that there are plans underway to make those improvements. So that's kind of the message. And you can check out our drip campaign on all of our socials. So.
What a plug. I didn't even tee her up for that. She took that over. I think back, the downtown conversation is always interesting to me because you and I remember, and Casey, if you don't every couple of years, some new idea came along, Copper Square or whatever, the Copper District. And then and they've just it's just never stuck.
What do you think stuck it? What was...
I think what Jack said, ASU coming downtown in the mid-aughts was a huge, huge move, mostly because of all the land they were purchasing, putting the buildings in, light rail, all of those things. But to your point, arts and culture, Roosevelt Row, all of that is kind of creates that organic growth of people wanting to move. Because again, you'd come downtown. My dad was at the fire station at Sky Harbor in the late 90s. And back then, maybe you're getting a meal during the day or going to Bob. And other than that, you were not parking your car and you were not walking around downtown.
Oh, wow. See.
So it's always fun. So Casey, what are your thoughts coming in from your Virginia born, coming here, when you see the growth, do you get questions or have you had comments people who have grown up here or the development, what do you see in your role with the business development team?
When I first came here and did my onboarding, got up to speed on everything that's going on from semiconductors to healthcare to just advanced manufacturing, aerospace and defense. It was just a playground for me because I grew up in Hampton Roads, big naval community down there, then went to Richmond. And I thought I had a lot to play with, but coming here and just being able to advocate for so many different things as an economic developer, it's exciting and it gets me up every morning. And you get to come and do work in a different way every single day.
And I'd actually like to say that I don't think that GPEC necessarily gets enough credit for especially the semiconductor investment and their role in helping bring those organizations to Arizona.
Yeah.
So thanks to GPEC.
Yeah. GPEC, Chris Mackey, former Governor Ducey, current governor,
Yes.
Mayor Gallego. There was I don't think a lot of people know this was 5 years plus in the making of tedious. I didn't have to do any of it. I can just tell y'all, but I saw people who had to do it. And, the meticulous nature of a deal of that caliber is massive. Yeah. But the feedback that we have received, not only from the TSMCs and the Intels, but supply chain is airfare, airlines. We're going to get into that because we're already, as I'm sure you get hit up every day.
Good.
Hey, when are we getting a route? When are we getting a route? When are we getting a route? They think that planes grow on trees and they just roll off the line, piece of cake. But business community, business sector, I think one thing that our region has done so well, we hear about it from Camacho, our CEO from the St. Louis area, a lot of rivalry, kind of cannibalistic nature amongst groups, regions, municipalities, and, GPEC was started as a true regional model. What is good for one is good for all. Rising tide, you name the metaphor, we see it. And I think the biggest thing is we're sitting here in the heart of downtown Phoenix, but we have 22 cities and towns. Again, Gila Bend, Wickenburg, Casa Grande, Queen Creek. Well, now they're seeing a lot of these projects. And so it's not so much Center Phoenix or, the East Valley. Now everybody's eating Buckeye right now.
You bring up an interesting point when you kind of talk about the Northern Arizona or the Phoenix. The character has obviously changed, but something that has been so remarkable to see has been in Cottonwood, Arizona, or Page Springs, the wine industry that has popped up.
To me.
Which is, if you told me that I would be drinking Cottonwood or Cornville wine.
I was just going to say, Cornville.
That's exactly
do you know
right.
that there's a city called Cornville?
No, I'm not surprised though.
And Page Springs Winery, go down there. They're not paying me to say this. But go down there, grab, they have a picnic box you can get. You can essentially take it anywhere on their property. Enjoy it when it's not so hot outside. But their wine's good, and it's fundamentally different place than it was when I was younger.
Yeah, people always want to associate, especially like the McCain Institute. It's like, sit down. I'm like, it's technically Cornville.
That's right.
As a Prescott boy,
That's right.
like it's technically Cornville. But just for the record, Cornville is a real city.
I think we have a retreat in Sedona for staff. I think we're trying to do something on the way back. So maybe I'll try to convince my friends.
You've got Casey sold on the
wine.
On the wineries. Okay, so we were talking about growing up again downtown development, but one thing, which nice plug for our next podcast, which is going to be focused on Prop 400, half-cent sales tax to continue our transportation infrastructure investment in this great region, is that the 101s, the 202s, all these state routes. That has been essential to us. I say us at the table for drawing these companies, because when we do look at some of our competitor cities and states, some that used to be competitors, which aren't even like, the Austins, the LAs, like they're built. Like there's really not a lot going on, and we have the opportunity to really. So I just teed it up for the transportation, but would be interested in your thoughts, for the next couple of years, from your role at American or just you being a native, like where do you see our state going with regard to that growth? Like, can we maintain nice, smart growth? What do you see in your industry? Because I know airlines are meticulous, data, metric. We're not getting routes unless there's butts and seats.
It's funny because my counterparts who do the planning for where we fly, why we fly there, it's called network planning. I always laugh. They make my job really hard because they're essentially, when you think of the green eye shade, numbers, data, they don't care that the governor is going to yell at you or that the mayor is going to be upset.
That's your problem, not their problem.
That's the government affairs problem. But the best advice that I can give anyone with respect to air travel, specifically network planning, is if you build it, they will come. If it's going to be a profitable market, it will be. And as far as Arizona goes, specific to our airline, we are up in terms of travel massively. We're flying more and more aircraft out of Phoenix than ever. COVID, while it was an incredibly negative thing for the industry, crystallized Arizona and Phoenix Sky Harbor as one of our best hubs just because of ease of use. They have very, very competitive rates and charges. I sound like a professional when I say stuff like that.
Hey, listen, my wife and I have taken the American Airlines direct to Puerto Vallarta like 3 times now.
Absolutely.
And it's just it's just the go-to.
I was on the London flight a couple of weeks ago. It was wonderful. That's a really great flight for Phoenix to have is direct to London. But the rate of growth is pretty massive here. We want to make sure that the airport can stay as competitive as possible. There are a few things, expansion especially is one of those. There's some really in-depth plans as to what that looks like. It's a capital investment plan. It's on Sky Harbor's website if you want to see. But changing where the railroad's at so that there can be expansion on the other side of the runways is great. Runway extension, I'm sure, is sometime in the future. The bigger the runway, the more traffic you can have, the heavier aircraft. And obviously, it's very hot here. When it's hot, aircraft take a long time to take off. So you need a longer runway.
And shout out to Sky Harbor for their inclusion of local-owned restaurants, bars, whatnot. Every time I travel, I go to another airport, I'm expecting the world. And I'm like, what, McDonald's and Wendy's? Don't get me wrong, I'm not above McDonald's or Wendy's. But going into Sky Harbor and you have premier food and drink.
Oso, Four Peaks, it's really a great place to eat. I'm in the airport a lot, and I'm not trying to be biased when I say that Sky Harbor is one of the best to spend time in.
I would agree.
And that rolls into I will fight on site anybody who claims like the food scene in Phoenix isn't good, because that shows me they haven't been around the valley and they don't know what they're talking about. And I think it starts at the airport, when you're coming off and you're seeing local cuisine, good chefs, all these good spots. The Phoenix and the greater Phoenix food scene is top notch.
I cannot disagree at all. One of the things that growing up here, you get very familiar with Mexican food. And there are some things, like the specific way they make machaca, the carne seca, is you just cannot find it anywhere else. It was like a brainworm driving me insane living on the East Coast. So
Jack, try living in Biloxi, Mississippi for 4 years.
But you have other cuisine, like Southern cuisine.
I've kidded around with Casey when I moved down to the Gulf Coast. Hey, New Orleans, great city. Biloxi, actually, great city. Down near your naval guys on the Panhandle. I had to transition to Cajun food because it was like I needed that. Whatever it is, to your point, it's not hitting. And I remember talking to my functional commander when I was looking to maybe stay in. She's like, well, what do you want? I was like, just get me back out west. I will stay on active duty. Just get me out west. I need the sun. I need mountains. I need Mexican. They're like, you're tasked at Langley. I'm like, I'm out. It was just like a no-brainer. I was like, peace. I'm out of here.
Thanks.
If I can't get a good burrito or, to your point, some good carne asada, it's over.
It drove me so nuts that I finally just taught myself to make it. I remember being in a BOQ room in Japan and was able to scrounge up the ingredients to make a decent amalgamation of machaca and Mexican food. So that's something that's second to none.
I need to talk to my mother-in-law. I can have her send you a few recipes.
As much as I hate to say it too, I think Tucson probably has the best Mexican food in Arizona.
Really?
My go-to when I'm not seeking out machaca is the Fry Bread House.
That's 3 houses down from where I live.
It is. Fry bread is also something you try to explain to somebody that's not from around here or from somewhere that has fry bread tacos, and it doesn't make any sense.
Can you explain it? I've never been. And for listeners,
it's from me growing up, spending a lot of time on the Navajo reservation. I associate it with Navajo culture. I know that there are some other Native American tribes that it's associated with as well. But essentially, it is a piece of fried dough, almost like naan, but more oily and a little kind of different consistency, almost chewy. And the traditional way, and I will fight people on this, it's no meat. You get usually beans, probably some red sauce, cheese, and a few other vegetarian things you put in there. It's hard to describe just how good it is, but it is also something that you're never going to find that outside either this region or Mexico.
Now, do you do the sweet? Well, are you good for a dessert fry bread as well? Cinnamon, brown sugar, or just hearty, savory?
Listen, I'm always down for the sweets. One of my life problems is I've never met a cuisine that I didn't like. And so, yes, always the sweets.
Yeah, I think we should start Casey off with, because it's right by Char's House of the Blues.
Yeah.
So you could start at the Fry Bread House, get a nice meal, go to Char's.
Is it late night? Is it late night?
They're open. So they have weird hours.
They do.
My wife and I have tried to go over there, and there's like random times. It's like 2:00 and they're not open. So you have to kind of pick and choose.
Okay.
But Char's, you love Char's House of the Blues.
I do love Char's.
It's right there.
Okay. I'll have to. I mean, it's right in the neighborhood too, although I may be moving out.
If we're going to spend time on food, I think we were going to go somewhere else. But we got one more secret restaurant. My old man always associated his experience in Vietnam with nothing. I mean, it was negative at the time, but later on, war was war. It was a chapter of his life that's closed, and he wanted to make sure that they could reconcile, that he could help Vietnam become the ally and friend that they are today for the betterment of both countries. But there is a restaurant. It used to be called Pho Bang. Now it's called Pho Tan.
Up on Indian School. Indian School, yeah.
I want to say it's like 16th Avenue and Camelback. I just I'm on...
Camelback. I'm sorry, because I was just there a few weeks ago. So yes.
I'm on like autopilot every time I go. But we used to go there almost every week.
It's amazing.
It's fantastic food, and it's a great representation of the Vietnamese community in Arizona.
Now, the one thing, Casey, and anybody listening, do not expect to be wined and dined and, have comments. They are, what would you like? Sit down, eat it, enjoy it, get out of my restaurant.
Exactly.
And it's perfect.
I love it.
It's exactly what you want it to be.
Okay.
Have you been out to Little Saigon in Glendale?
I have, yes.
That's a good one too.
Absolutely.
Do they have multiple locations in the Valley or just one?
No, they have one, but they're opening some kind of banh mi pho shop or something. But Little Saigon by City of Glendale, also pretty solid. But yeah, Pho Tan. I remember my good friends were like, you have to go there. And I would try to call an order in. That was absolutely not happening.
No, don't do that.
Don't try to call an order in. They'll sometimes you put it in, they're like, great. They don't give you a time, a total, a name, nothing. And then it magically is ready when you get there.
Okay.
I mean, we have been going there as long as I've been alive, and it is really, it's home for me, that restaurant. But
yeah. Are you a banh mi guy? Do you like the sandwich?
I do pho, but I also do cracked rice, which is one of my favorite. Cracked rice and beef with lemongrass. Fantastic.
Have you had a banh mi? It's like Vietnamese. It's like the French inclusion, po' boy, banh mi. It's like
it sounds fantastic.
Crusty French bread. It's got to be crusty, crunchy. You throw whatever you want on there, some sauce, and it is it's good stuff.
Colonialism did a lot of bad things, but Vietnamese cuisine was not one of them.
Little French influence.
Yes.
You took the best parts of French cuisine and the best parts of East Asian cuisine, you smash them together, and you get what is one of the most remarkably good things you can eat.
Okay.
See, Casey's happy for this podcast because now you got Jack's got you.
I got a list going.
You got a whole list. So let's go back. We're gonna hit some of the fun stuff. We still got some time here. We're moving pretty quickly. We were talking about what that future looks like, and I want to be careful, obviously, due to a lot of things. But there's been good political shifts in Arizona. There have been bad political shifts in Arizona. You've had a firsthand experience on a lot of that since you were born, but even through today, again, keeping it high level, what you feel comfortable. Where do you think the state is going? Or I guess, where would you like to see the state going?
Sure. So I stake my reputation in the state as a nonpartisan individual, which some people would say that that's just because I'm cynical. I don't happen to agree with that, but maybe there's some truth to it. I think the most important indicator of where the state's headed is the fact that now independents make up a larger percentage of voters than either party does. That's a pretty remarkable shift. Now, it's one that's echoed in the United States larger, but I work in Texas, I work in New Mexico, I work in Colorado and Nevada, and here it's the most stark. I think that we have a very healthy proposition system. I think that there are probably some reforms that could be made so that people from outside the state, whatever side of the argument proposition is coming from, don't necessarily have the outsized influence given, you can spend a lot of money on a campaign. Mm-hmm. But I think as we see an increase in independent voters, that's indicative to both parties that maybe there are some reforms that need to be made. Something that's always intrigued me about Arizona, and the older I get, the more I appreciate it, is there is still a little bit of that Old West individualistic spirit that exists here. And I think that's a very healthy thing for the state. It's what helps us attract businesses. Now, sometimes it can go a little bit awry, but I think overall, keeping a little bit of that, call it rugged individualism, I guess, or just the Old West alive, I think is important going forward. And I don't think that's something that you can necessarily foster inorganically, but to allow it to flourish, I think is important.
Yeah, I think you see, let's go back. I don't know if political hero, because I don't want to call them heroes, but, Barry Goldwater kind of started it. You go through to your old man, to even like DeConcini, Mo Udall, the Udalls. There's always been this very... You talk about, I think was it 80 when Dems were talking about maybe nominating Mo Udall. He said, if nominated, I will flee to Mexico. And if elected, I will fight, And it was just funny, right? Yeah. Just like that. They got some fire. They got some fire in their bellies.
Exactly.
And so that would be nice. Casey, I'd like to turn over to you for your perspective, because you and I talk politics. Mm-hmm. I try to give you my I don't know if unbiased is the right word, but I try to give you my straight shot.
Yeah.
Coming from Virginia, you're at the heart of politics. You're so close to DC, you know, everything to hear. What has been kind of your views, or what have you seen, good, bad, and different?
In the political sphere, keeping it high level without digging too deep. I would say the rise of the independent, yes. I think that moving to Arizona, when I told people that I was from Virginia, they're like, why? Like, you're getting ready to isolate yourself, like, be careful. We'll always have a job back here in Virginia for you if you ever want to come back. But I'm like, you do realize we're Virginia, though, right? Something that was a shocker for me was just how open and how welcoming the state was, despite a lot of the stereotypes that are associated with it. So when I tell people about Phoenix and my experience, they're just like, wow, like, I wasn't expecting you to assimilate and make friends as quickly as you did from all sides of the aisle. Like, all my friends are on a spectrum, and we can all have very candid conversations and just have different viewpoints, but still move the needle along, if that makes sense. So,
absolutely. One thing, because I know you deal with this in your job, I deal with it in mine. Local is where the power is.
Yes.
Our city and town councils, our boards of supervisors. You know, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors has gone to hell and back over the last few years, upholding their duty, upholding what they signed up for. And one thing, and again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here with where you've grown up, but everybody, governor. I'm like, what about your school board races? What about your city and town council races? What if, like, a city council member can mess you up, you personally, Jack, with the airport more than any federal, well, you know what I mean. I mean, you've got to remain in the weeds because, going back to the Tip O'Neill, all politics is local.
Absolutely. No, here, especially, or, you know, working in all over the place, the politics that are closest to you are the ones that are going to affect you the most. What happens in Washington, yeah, it can have an impact on you. But like what you said, a local supervisor can have a much greater day-to-day impact on what you do and how you exist than somebody in Washington. So yeah, I think a very astute observation. And it's not just because I work in state and local politics. It's the absolute truth.
Absolutely. Okay, now we've been talking about the future. I'd like to have a little bit of fun. Okay, you already talked about bars or restaurants. You came right out the gate. Cobra Arcade. respect that. Patan. What are some of your other, let's just say, favorite spots in the region? We'll keep it. We got to keep Cornville out of it for now. We'll keep it to within the region. What are some of your go-to spots?
Of course. I grew up going to a restaurant. It's on, I think, 7th and about Missouri, called Jordan's. It's been there forever. And I would describe it as Sonoran comfort food. You're not going in there because it's the spiciest place in the world. You're going in there because you like cheese and flavor. So that's one of my mom's father, who is much more Arizonan than any other member of my family, knew Joe Jordan. They were lifelong friends. And so I went there also about once a week.
You ate good as a kid.
I did. I was very lucky.
Casey, as a newish person, what's been your go-to bar or restaurant?
I do like AZ Wilderness. That's like my go-to downtown when I want to do a happy hour.
And they have vegan options.
Yes.
If anybody's married to a vegan like I am, a place like Wilderness, essential.
Absolutely. I haven't made it to Bianco yet, but it's on my list. I don't eat out much. I don't get out much just because we work so hard.
What's this we?
I work so hard. But yeah, I would say AZ Wilderness. I do love Francine's in Scottsdale. I love Cashmere's in Scottsdale. That's like my favorite wine whiskey bar.
You have gotten me thinking Persian Room in Scottsdale. If you like Persian food.
I love Persian food.
I have a bit of a love for it between my association. I studied Iran in college and my association with Afghanistan. Khyber Halal.
Yes, I love that place.
And I owe them a significant amount because when the Afghan evacuation happened and we ended up bringing about 250 Afghans here from my little tiny piece of it, Khyber Halal closed down to help provide food for all the humanitarian parolees and refugees. So not only is their food fantastic, but they're fine human beings as well.
I remember the first time I got like a kebab order to go and they handed me the bag and my arm was like through the floor, took it home, and you know my wife, it was like, what the hell? I'm like, don't worry about it.
They have a dish called mantu, which is like a dumpling. Too hot for it right now, but in the winter, it's perfect.
Oh man, I just went to the Green Corner with Ashley Busada. It's out in Mesa. I thought it was going to be a chain, but it's actually really, really good. And it's like the go-to brunch spot on like a Sunday in Mesa. I think they also have a location in Chandler as well, but that was good.
And for those listening, you can't tell, but Casey is literally jotting a list out of everything Jack tells her. So this could be, for everybody listening.
I'm ready for our food episode.
Yeah. Okay, my ADD brain here. I have to go back to one thing for you as a newcomer to Arizona. Were you shocked at how large the counties were here?
Yes.
Because I remember when I moved to Mississippi, I drove through 3 counties to Keesler Air Force Base. It took me 12 minutes. I'm like, why don't you just have giant country-sized counties like we do in Arizona? I don't understand this.
I know. I had a lot of cities, so we didn't have counties. It was maybe 1 or 2 counties in Hampton Roads. So to come here in Maricopa County to be our region, essentially.
Not for nothing, a few years ago, some former GPECers and I had to do what we call community partnership program. We meet with the mayors, the council members, we go over economic priorities, et cetera. And we just happened to schedule Apache Junction and Wickenburg on the same day. So I've done the tip to tip. And it's just weird. You can drive for 2 hours and you're still in one county.
Yep.
It's very odd. Anyway, sorry. I had to because I remember moving to Mississippi. I was like, why are there so many damn counties?
There's too many counties. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good for the local municipalities and law enforcement who set up speed traps on I-10 and just got a speed trap coming back from Eglin. So I was over there for the weekend, enjoying the nice blue waters, and coming back, I may have been speeding a little bit, just a little bit, and get pulled over. I'm thinking, I've never used the military card, but I'm like, how do I do this gracefully? So the guy's super cool. I was like, I'm so sorry, sir. I thought it was, whatever excuse I made up. He's like, nope. I was like, and I did the old, hey, can I pay this online? Like, I got to get back to Keesler Air Force Base. Like, not going to. And the guy basically told me to pound sand. Come back the week later for my court appearance, and there were 600 people that had to report that day to pay the fine, get the driving school. And I was like, I just figured, and literally the county tip comes crosses I-10 by about 30 feet. And I was like, damn it.
In Virginia.
Oh, yes.
Funny enough, Washington County, Virginia, I was coming from... I was coming from Tennessee. I was in Tullahoma, Tennessee, doing some weird training out there, which was a lot of fun. And I had crossed over. I was going back to Maryland, 45 feet into the state. Got hit. I had my cruise control set, so I was a little confused. I was doing 9 over. This same way. I was about 2 weeks from deploying to Afghanistan, and the police officer kindly asked me, why was I speeding? Oh, you're trying to do kind of the same thing, not too bad, but I'm headed back to go see my family right before I deploy to Afghanistan. And the police officer kind of smiled and walked off, and then came back and handed me my ticket.
Oh,
so
I'll get you. I know Virginia is known for their speed traps. I got one in Emporia as well. And it's just I'm never going back to Emporia for a court appearance. Just pay it.
Yeah. Don't miss those southern
I do have a question as a non-native. Okay, so those speed traps in Scottsdale, the cameras, do you pay them?
So I'd have to, this is not a legal podcast, Casey, and I'm not a licensed attorney. However, years ago, I can only speak to, yes, outside of Paradise Valley up until a couple years ago, had to serve you personally in order to basically get you on the hook. Most cities have a way around it now that they can serve you. Generally means person to person. You have to hand it to their person, but now they can do, I think it's deliver 3 and you are considered served. Oh. Again, this is not a legal podcast. I am not a licensed attorney, but you need to look into those because the government is going to get theirs.
I know.
Pay the fine, suck it up, and move on.
I know. I've already paid one of them. So
now this is a good transition. Jack, we were talking a week or 2 ago. I believe you've got a new addition in your garage, which probably will lend itself to some of these issues. Could you tell us a little bit about that new piece of machine in your garage?
Absolutely. So I need to start this with my daily driver is a Jeep Wrangler 2-door. And I've owned one automatic car in my entire life, and I hated it. So as I've gotten older, I've devolved in car tastes, I guess. And so I sold my last car, which I won't go into what that was, but it was European, and it was a little too European. It had some quirks that didn't work out so well. But I wanted something American, and I wanted something carbureted And growing up, I used to work on cars myself. My first car was a 1973 Camaro with a 350 in it. I did most of the work myself. I wanted to try to get back to that now that I have a house and I don't move once every 3 years. And so I have a 1969 Chevelle with a 396, a massive piece of iron engine in there and a 4-speed transmission. It's been great so far. I've only had it a couple weeks. I did have to drive around with the heat on in traffic already. Big engine produces a lot of heat, so I got to get used to that still. But as far as cars go, it's got a squishy suspension and a big old angry engine, and it is an absolute blast to drive.
As I think I told you on the phone, I get in that car and get criminal speeding ticket. Nobody cares who I am. You, however, that's like front page news. So, try to just, keep it a little closer to the speed limit.
I'm not sure that the fuel tank is big enough to actually get up to speed in the car. So, yeah, I think we'll be okay. I'm also lucky in that it feels very fast, but it's not actually that fast.
It's got a big, it's just, you got a big engine.
It's big, it's simple. You can fix it with a hammer. And by comparison to what I had been driving, I'm really, really happy with it.
Love it. Those late 60s. I'm a Bullitt guy. So,
Fantastic.
Dodge, Steve McQueen's Mustang and those late, that 67 to 69. Excellent.
I think too, this was not why I bought the car because I didn't actually realize it until the other night, but John Wick series has some Chevelles in it. So I, realized 2 or 3 nights ago watching that movie and I'm like, oh man, now I'm a stereotype.
And hilariously, we're the least educated at this table because Casey here, big F1 fan.
I am.
Loves the racing.
Yes.
Who was your team?
Mercedes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Lewis got it on pole this weekend. I was very happy to see that, but unfortunately we didn't have the race pace to win the race.
I am sadly a Ferrari fan.
I mean, okay, as long as you're not a Red Bull fan.
No, God,
okay.
no.
All right. I do like Ferrari, and I think if Lewis wasn't with Mercedes, he would be with Ferrari.
Watching Ferrari over the last couple of years has been
traumatic.
Well, it's hard to be a Ferrari fan.
Yeah.
So
the strategy is just like, I don't understand who's running that team.
Most importantly, who can you call in your network to get Casey up to Vegas next year?
Please. I'm like, I will do what I have to do to get to Vegas or anywhere overseas in Europe,
Thankfully, there are no small number of nonstops from Sky Harbor to McCain Airport on American Airlines. So
look at that plug.
I'm happy to fly American.
Fun fact, I was in Vegas last year for a wedding, and they were doing like the test run for F1, and listen, it's going to be...
The track is going to be insane.
It's going to be insane.
It's going to be
madhouse. I am in Vegas quite a bit for work, too, and I don't gamble, not on principle, but I'm just a terrible gambler. I lose money hand over fist. And so instead of gambling, I go to Vegas to eat.
Hey, smart.
Yeah,
very smart.
I've heard their spas there are amazing as well. So they have an underrated spa scene in Vegas.
And I know this is the Greater Phoenix podcast, but good food scene, huge Asian district.
You have family there, yeah?
I do. Yeah. No, good. Can't beat it. I was just up there for NBA Summer League with the Phoenix Suns, representing their region.
Hey-o.
Of course.
Enjoying that new sphere. Wild. The big sphere of the sky.
I'm a big cyberpunk dystopia fan, and that's like right on brand. I love it.
Yeah, when you're coming in and you see the basketballs when we were there, and I mean, it no matter what video you see, you have to be there.
Just imagine when F1 is there.
Yeah,
it's going to be insane.
It's going to be good. Okay, I will leave the last question for Casey. Okay. I saw you posting some memes about it, so we got to get right to the source, Jack.
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
So I have yet to see either.
Really?
I know. I'm a huge cinema fan. I love going to the movies. I love the act of like getting a popcorn and sitting down for the movie. I really like Christopher Nolan, obviously Memento. I didn't like Tenet very much. I thought maybe...
Because you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't hear it, and maybe somebody needed to rein Christopher Nolan in a tiny bit. Yeah. But Dunkirk, in my opinion, is a perfect film, and I don't say that lightly. Taking 3 disparate timeline stories and weaving them together that way is a remarkable feat, and it's perfectly written, perfectly cast, perfectly scored. So I am gonna say, not having seen either Oppenheimer, I don't know. I'm sure the Barbie movie's fun. I'm not denigrating that at all, but if I had one night and was only going to be able to see one movie, I'd go see Oppenheimer over seeing
case
the
you
Barbie
saw-
movie.
I saw Oppenheimer,
but not Barbie.
not Barbie yet. I listened to the soundtrack thoroughly, though.
I will tell you, I have similar views on Nolan. Oppenheimer, it hits.
Okay.
It was really good.
Okay. I was worried that Hollywood would not be able to make a movie about the atomic bomb with any level of nuance, but from what I hear, it is really well done.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy, if you like him, Peaky Blinders, 28 Days, all that.
Sunshine. Now that's earlier Cillian Murphy movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Very good. He's excellent. And
Emily Blunt was amazing as well.
Robert Downey Jr. steals it, though. No spoilers, no nothing. I think we grew up pre-rehab. Amazing actor, Robert Downey Jr. He has one of the greatest comeback stories ever.
He does.
Comes back in as Iron Man, blah, blah, blah. But we've seen him in that Marvel lens for so long. And I saw a guy tweet, like, they haven't given Robert Downey Jr. the ball like that to let him cook. And he is unbelievable.
You know, that does make me want to plug one of my all-time favorite movies, Robert Downey Jr., Aviation, Air America. This is a buddy action comedy with him and Mel Gibson in the 90s.
Yep, I remember that.
It is a wild ride. So food and movies, I guess. That's what I can provide.
And to kind of wrap this up, since we are focused on economic development, one good thing about things coming back was on Saturday, AMC had their 5th largest take in history in their 100 years for ticket sales, and second highest food and beverage take, only behind Avengers Endgame, which obviously set like every record.
Right.
So people are back, and I think as a cinema guy myself, hey, I love Marvel, Star Wars, sequels, John Wick, I'm in. But I think the public has been clamoring for some kind of original content, something without a number behind it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, everybody went to the movies this weekend and spent a lot of money.
Absolutely. If I'm going to go see it, the Esplanade, I've been going there since I was 5 years old. Yeah. But yeah, I think I am most excited for the release of the second half of Dune.
Oh my God, me too. I started reading the books
It's going to be amazing.
I have been a Dune fan my whole life. I read the books when I was probably 12.
Yeah.
And I have a soft spot for David Lynch. And I think that his interpretation, they should have just let David Lynch be David Lynch instead of the studio involvement the way it happened. But the vision that Denis Villeneuve had was as close to what I had in my own head growing up. Yeah.
So, all right, we've been having fun. We're going to wrap this up. Casey, any last questions, comments?
No, this was great. It was great getting to know you, and thank you for all of the recommendations.
I'm sorry that an economic development podcast turned into food and movie time with Jack.
That is economic development, Jack.
Yes,
Listen,
that is all we do.
Let's go back to your military training. Maslow's hierarchy needs, right? Like,
Absolutely.
What are those 4 levels on the pyramid? Like at the end of the day, good meal, roof over our head, see a good movie. That's economic development.
Absolutely.
I'm going to the Diamondbacks tonight. Gotta support the home team and stimulate the economy. It's in my job title. I have to go do that. So with that being said, Jack, again, we appreciate you greatly. You've been a huge impact at GPEC. I appreciate getting to know you over the years, coming on, sharing some of your stories, the growth, some of your history. I think folks are going to be really interested when they listen to this. And again, maybe we'll come back here down the road, but always good. Great recommendations. You heard it here, folks, whether it's Phoenix, Tucson, Las Vegas, we got you covered. But most importantly, the focus on this great region. So again, with that, we will send you on your way. Jack, thank you, sir.
Glad to be
Appreciate
here.
everything.
Thanks so much.